On January 1st, 1993, the saga of an unlikely television sensation began.
Michaela Quinn, MD, the new doctor.
I'm afraid I don't quite understand. The telegram said Michael Quinn.
I believe I spelled it out quite clearly. That's Michael with an A. My father was expecting a male.
So was I.
Little did delighted fans know how the show's marquee star joined literally at the last minute.
I was first approached for Dr. Quinn when I was actually in desperate financial straits. I'd called my agent and I had a divorce happening. I found out I was incredibly in debt that I didn't know about, and I had to work yesterday. So he called all the networks and said, Jane is willing to do anything, including a series. And CBS said, well, we have one called Dr. Quinn, but she has to decide by tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So at 7 p.m., the night before, I was handed the script. I read it that night. I read it again the following morning. I had tears in my eyes. It really spoke to me. I went immediately to meet Beth Sullivan for the first time at noon. We had lunch. I went immediately into hair and makeup where they started fitting costumes. I started work the next morning at 6 a.m.
With the pilot airing opposite the Orange Bowl, CBS's expectations weren't high.
The reviews had been scathing. I mean, the New York Times said it was the worst show since My Mother the Car.
We all knew that we were given the death slot and we were opposite the Orange Bowl, and we made the top 10 both nights, 2 nights in a row. I think we came in 7th and 10th.
Soon after that, Beth Sullivan, the producer, called and says, I've got a job for you, got a lot of work ahead of it, and boom, there we were.
Dr. Quinn's Saturday night success surprised everyone except series creator Beth Sullivan.
I remember Beth Sullivan telling us when we got that time slot that it was a blessing, and everybody thought she was crazy.
Saturday night was such a black hole of Calcutta in those days that the networks were seriously considering giving it back to the local stations.
Saturday night at that time was a night of television that nobody watched. I mean, all the networks had given up.
People kind of laughed at us in town for a while there until you start producing numbers, and then we were no joke. It was like we're a hit.
For Sullivan, producing a quality show began with strong writing.
She's the kind of a writer who's a storyteller like Dickens, and she would come up with story after story after story that had a kind of a universal appeal.
She wrote a bunch of stuff that I'm sure was very much her background in her life, but what she didn't know that she'd written was my background in my life. She didn't know that my father was a doctor. She didn't know I was one of 3 girls. She didn't know that my father raised me with the history of medicine, with a microscope by the time I was 7. I saw surgery when I was 10. I've been working in hospitals since I was 3 or 4. She had no idea about that.
For authenticity, the show was shot entirely on location on the Paramount Ranch in the wilds of the Santa Monica Mountains.
Dr. Quinn's set wasn't a controlled environment at all. We couldn't control the sound, and we were in an area where on Tuesdays, I think it was, when garbage would be picked up, you'd hear the trucks backing up, and they didn't have those in 1872.
We'd get up there at 6 in the morning and it was freezing, and we'd put our long johns on. Then by noon, even in the winter, the hot sun, baking in the valley we were in, we were sorry we had the underwear on. People are dressed in full outfits, the garb on, and just boom, dropping left and right.
Bees and wasps. There were scenes we would do. One I remember in particular with the starving girlfriend of Matthew. We gave her chicken and she had to eat this chicken, and she was literally swarmed with bees. It's actually in the show.
We had a flood during the pilot that took a bunch of our stuff away.
It was a rattlesnake had gone right under my horse. Now, the fact that Joe's horse didn't spook and see it, or mine, is a complete miracle.
All of a sudden you hear the coyotes all going crazy. Someone in the area lost another cat.
While filming the episode titled Giving Thanks, off-screen danger spread to the set.
A large majority of the area around us was on fire. Malibu was burning, Calabasas was burning, and we were right in the middle.
It was scary, and we kept shooting, and we wondered, is one of the 2 roads going to be closed off? Well, it was. Well, now we only had 1 road to get out. What if we were trapped there?
And the sky was black because of the fires, and there were pieces of ash falling on my face, and they'd do another take, they just picked the ash off.
Like what happened in Pompeii, and we kept on thinking, are they going to find us like this in the morning, buried in ash?
Maintaining high standards was key. For Jane, the pressure was intense.
I had to shoot when I was sick. I had to shoot when I was pregnant with twins.
At the end of the day, it was Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and the success of the show depended upon Jane.
I was hoping that we might learn from one another. I'm willing if you are.
Jane, of course, was in every show and practically a lot of times in every scene.
In the beginning, I would work 16 to 18-hour days. I would have half an hour off for lunch. During that half hour, I'd eat for about 5–10 minutes, and then I would have to do an interview for the press, or a photo shoot for the press, or I would be doing a costume fitting. Because every day I would have maybe 9 costume changes.
While Jane faced maddening hours, Joe took his lumps in a different way.
I always loved being really physical. I loved doing the fight scenes. I'd get hurt in rehearsals more than I'd actually get hurt while doing the stunt. Because during rehearsals, you're not really paying that much attention. You're not so focused. I caught a couple punches in the face. And my gimmick was throwing that tomahawk. You know, that was the hook that I wanted to bring the little boys in with. Learning to ride bareback, that was a huge challenge. That involved a lot of ice. Running across the top of a train. I mean, how often do you get to do that? I thought that was pretty cool. The fact that I could do a lot of my own stunts made the character that much more believable.
Despite the rigors of shooting, the cast still found ways to unwind.
Orson, you know, he's so funny. He would just be like talking, doing a crossword puzzle, something else. 3, 2, 1, action. Ah, silly.
Ah, who are you kidding? We both saw those scroungers.
Orson and Jim Knoblauch, who played Jake Slicker, was famous for finding a fresh piece of horse dropping, sticking it in someone's pocket.
I love Jim Knoblauch. He did terrible things to me, terrible things to me. I fell asleep one day in my chair in the hot sun, woke up, and there was a horse bun on my lap.
Some laughs even came at the doctor's expense.
It became a running joke that, you know, it seemed like constantly she was trying to cut off somebody's something. I remember being stuck in a mine shaft and she was going to cut off my leg.
I think I was injured or sick more than practically anyone on the show.
I participated a lot as, you know, as a surgical assistant in the middle of a cave or a field when somebody had to get, you know, an emergency tracheotomy with a piece of hay or something.
Dr. Quinn did ridiculous things like inventing plastic surgery.
I want to recreate him.
There was a scene where a guy had a horrible train wreck accident. His face was hideously disfigured. She gave him a new face. Well, okay.
As the show's popularity grew, everyone realized just how big their little family show had become.
Eventually, we were being seen in 90 countries. I'd say, you know, where are you from? I'm from Osaka, Japan. And I'm from Munich, Germany. I mean, all over the world.
Australia, Poland, Russia, they really hooked into something about the show.
I mean, I went to El Salvador with UNICEF, and I'm in the middle of literally a garbage heap with the poorest, saddest people in the world. And they all scream and yell and run up to me and go, "Dr. Quinn, Dr. Quinn."
For the cast, Dr. Quinn was a labor of love that brought families back to network TV.
I think it uniquely struck a chord with people globally, which is also unique, because it dealt with the human condition. And it took issues that we're dealing with today, very relevant issues, whether it's about parenting, medicine, ecology, religion, race, education. I mean, you name it, we covered it.
There's a place out there for shows like NYPD Blue, and there's a place for Ally McBeal, and there's a place for shows like Dr. Quinn. You know, I think we really kind of brought back that whole genre of, you know, family values. Shows like Seventh Heaven, Touched by an Angel, they all seem to come after Dr. Quinn, which kind of paved the way.
A lot of the people loved the ensemble cast. That, yes, there was Jane Seymour and Joe, the central characters, Michaela and Sully, but there was a whole town full of people, and you got into their lives as well.
We made a show that was that told good stories, had some element of lessons. It was for family. It was created for its audience. It found its audience and served its purpose.
The show's legacy is that it was the little engine that could. This was a show that was about a strong woman who was also vulnerable and did make mistakes. It was about family. It was about social issues. It was about life and death. It was about spirituality. It was about the history of America. It was about the human condition in every way, shape, and form. It was about relationships. It was a unique show.